Okay, so today being Wednesday night going into Thursday, it's the 25th of Cheshvan. And the Hayom Yom for today or tonight and tomorrow is that divine providence leads everyone to his place of residence for the purpose of strengthening Yiddishkeit and disseminating Torah. When you plow and you sow, things will grow. That's really what it says here. So I like this Hayom Yom, not just because it's talking about the place of your residence, but I feel like it really applies to any place you land up in, whether it's for half an hour, a day, 3 days, you're flying somewhere and by mistake you land up somewhere that you didn't think you were supposed to go. Really, every place you go is decided and decreed by divine providence. And what is the divine providence? So in case you were confused and you didn't know why you need to be in a particular place at a particular time, so it says here very clearly, for the purpose of strengthening Yiddishkeit and disseminating Torah. Now, in a previous Hayom Yom, it said something very similar, and then it was even specific, and it said, what should you do? And the answer, I don't know if any of you remember, was say Tehillim, say a parak of Tehillim, or make a bracha in a place. And of course, that's something you can do even if nobody is around. And then if there are people around, Jewish or non-Jewish, you have the opportunity to somehow bring in a Torah idea or a Torah thought. Now, it's interesting because a lot of things that I would say are Torah thoughts, person might think it has to be a deep, peel-pull, a deep analysis with Gemaras and with all kinds of complicated extrapolations, but it could really be something as simple as thou shalt not steal. Seems like people aren't so good with that one these days. Or, it's against God's will to commit adultery. People seem to need to hear that too. Or honor your parents. That doesn't seem to be something that everybody seems to know. So it doesn't have to be a complicated idea. It doesn't have to be something like, oh, I'm not, a rabbi, I didn't learn in yeshiva for 10 years. Very simple ideas that life is precious, every day is meaningful. Just because you're elderly and you're over 75 and somebody else might tell you you don't have a quality of life doesn't mean that, your life's not worth living. These are, to a frum person, these might be self-evident facts, but apparently out there in the world, such simple things are not always so self-evident. Just talking about the quality of life issue, recently there was a big scandal at one of the main hospitals in Manhattan. I can't remember which one, big hospital. And Satmar, who have been visiting and doing Bikur Cholim there for many, many years, were no longer allowed to come and visit the Jewish patients. And it turned out because the ladies, the Satmar Hasidic ladies, were encouraging the patients to not opt for compassionate euthanasia and termination of life practices because they were encouraged by these frum women to insist on treatment. And the hospital didn't like it. They didn't like that Jewish viewpoint being propagated.
Wow.
Because
wow.
they wanted
Wow.
to kind of push their agenda that, you're elderly now and you don't really have such a quality of life. So we're going to compassionately, just move along in this path. And the frum Bikur Cholim were telling the Jewish patients to resist that. And there is a huge agenda in secular world that's moving the world into different places ideologically than just basic ideas that life is precious, you're carrying a life, it's a holy thing, etc., etc. So don't feel that when you land up in a place and according to the Hayom Yom, you have an opportunity to share a word of Torah, don't think it has to be so complicated. It can be very simple and straightforward idea, and it's still meaningful in our world to stress things that we learn from Torah Hashkofas. So in that same line, I want to open with the opening words of this week's Parsha. And I believe I'm going to be able to do it together with you while you can look at the screen, because I think that I've been practicing and I've learned my screen saving skills. So I'm going to share my screen, and I believe you're still going to be able to see me and my screen. So there I am. I think you can still see me and you can see my screen. So we're going to start looking at this, and everybody can see the screen who's looking? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay.
And we can see it also, so it's all
And
good.
you can see me also, so I'm so proud that I figured out how to do this. Okay. So this week's Parsha starts off with Vayi Hayu, and it was Chaya Sara, the lifetime of Sarah, Mea Shana, 100 years, Ve'esrim Shana, and 20 years, Ve'sheva Shanim, and 7 years, Shnei Chayei Sarah, the years of the life of Sarah. So the Meforshim have a lot of things that they say about this. First of all, there's an interesting breakdown, and people who've learned this Parsha before would have seen it many, many times. That this is the life of Sarah, and each part of her life, instead of just saying 127 years, it says 100 years, then 20 years, then 7 years. So why do we do that? So Rashi tells us right there that, does somebody want to read the Rashi? That would be fun. Can have a participatory class, even in Zoom. The Rashi's in the brown box. Does someone want to read it? Hello? Anybody want to read it?
I can only read in English.
Okay. Yeah, sure. In English is perfect.
Okay. So which one you want? The life of Sarah?
Yeah, in the brown box.
Okay. And the life of Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. The reason that the word years was written after every digit is to tell you that every digit is to be expounded upon individually. When she was 100 years old, she was like a 20-year-old regarding sin. Just as a 20-year-old has not sinned because she is not liable to punishment, so too when she was 100 years old, she was without sin. And when she was 20, she was like a 7-year-old as regards to beauty.
Okay, so that's it's really very beautiful. So what does it mean? So up until the age of 20, a person's sins would not be counted in a court of law, in a Beis Din. So she wouldn't be punished. Up until 20, you're still an adult. You're an adult after your bat mitzvah, but you're not counted in a full way. Your status is still you're not liable to punishment basically until you're 20. So when she was 100, she was as pure and as free of sin as a 20-year-old. And then when she was 20, she was like a 7-year-old with regard to her beauty. Well, for us, thinking about a 20-year-old is also very young and innocent and beautiful, but as beautiful and innocent as a 7-year-old and probably innocent in all the aspects of that word, so she was when she was 20, like that. So we get introduced to Sara as a person who, when she was alive, she had this capacity that in a way she defied time. We know that in last week's Parsha, she was visited by the Malachim. She was visited by the Malachim, and she was told she was going to have a child, and the whole story with the birth of Yitzchak and all beautiful things. She was very advanced in her life, and it was a miracle, but there was still this capacity in her that could give birth to a child, even in her advanced years. And then here, when it's summarized about her, it's like all these years of her life were, she was youthful in her age, she was as beautiful as she aged as she was when she was very young, and she was as free of sin when she aged as she was when she was very young. So that's like a really a beautiful, whenever I think of Sara, I always think of this quality of hers, of being always youthful, young, available to change, able to change, able to embrace new things, a tremendous quality of life in it. Now, if we look at the next pasuk, and Sara died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Avram came to eulogize Sara and to cry for her. So I read a beautiful essay from Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, who used to be a very big teacher of mine. Haven't been learning so much from him lately, but I don't know if you can see this book. It's a new book. It's out. You can get it in the bookstores. Beautiful essay, and he's stressing in the essay how in her death Sara was so vibrant as a persona, so alive in all of her being, that in a way, not that she defies death, but her death is in a way of she's so alive in her being that even in death, she continues to have a resonance, and even physically, there's an aspect of her that is still very vibrant. Now, before I go into it word by word and pasuk by pasuk, I see there's a chat there, and it's hard for me to answer it right now. But there's stories told of great tzaddikim who were buried, and for some reason or another, their graves had to be opened up during the war or something, and they were found that their bodies hadn't degenerated. Their bodies were still very much intact, hadn't decomposed. And how is that possible? How could their bodies not decompose 20, 30, 40, 50 years after they were buried? And the answer of how it happened is that they were able, while they were alive, they infused their physical body with so much Chaya, so much life force, so much spiritual energy, that every part of their body was in a way charged with spirituality, so that when they passed away, that spirituality continued to kind of keep the physical body in a way very free from whatever it would make it available to decompose. So there was no, let's say, toxic element, or no element that was attached to something not holy, that so infused their physical body with Kedusha that even after they died, every limb had been used during its life for a mitzvah and for kedusha, that even after they died, their bodies didn't disintegrate or decompose. So first of all, we'll look at the Rashis, and then I'll show you how there's a hidden teachings to this vibrancy of Sara, even after she passed away, hidden inside the words of this pasuk. So does somebody want to read the part of Kiryat Arba? Rashi says, and Sara died, and where did she die? She died in a place called Kiryat Arba. Does somebody want to read the Rashis about this, which is Hebron? Anybody?
Is this and Sarah died? Yeah, I could do it, I think, but I have to it'll take me, I have to move my screen to read the whole thing, but I'll give it a shot. Number 2.
Okay.
And Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Avram came to eulogize Sarah, to bewail her.
Right. So I want you to read the Rashi now.
I got you. It's so small.
Oh, you know what? I
city,
can make it bigger. Let me try and make it bigger.
And you can zoom in on your own screen too.
Yeah. Try that.
I don't know how to make it bigger.
All right, when I do it, it goes back to the little, but I'll do the best I can. The city of the 4, so named because of the 4 giants who were there. Avram,
Achiman.
What? Oh, Ahiman, not Avram. See, Ahiman, Shishai, Talmud, and their father.
Right.
General, Rabbah. It's cut off.
No. That's where it's coming from.
Okay, yeah. It's from Genesis, and Bereshis Rabbah means the Medrash from Bereshis Rabbah.
General Genesis. That's
right.
Sneaky. Right. I got it.
I'll help you. So it's called Kiryat Arba, the city of the Arba, the 4. Why 4? Because there were 4 giants buried there. Achiman, Sheshai, Talmai, and their father. And another reason why it was called Kiryat Arba is because of the 4 couples that were buried there. Adam and Chava is 1 couple. Avram and Sarah, 2 couples. Yitzchak and Rivka, 3 couples. Yaakov and Leah, 4 couples. But you could say the other couples hadn't even been buried yet, but they would be buried there in the future. So it's the city of 4. So the 4 giants. The other explanation is hard to reconcile because those other couples hadn't been buried there yet. They would be in the future. Okay? And then Avram came. Where did he come? He came from Beersheba, and he came to cry because Sarah had died. Now, does somebody want to read why, in fact, Sarah died? It's written there. It's written there in the Rashi.
Can I just ask something before you go on?
Yes.
Who are these 4 giants? I've never heard these names before.
Yes.
And what's their significance?
Yeah, I don't know actually the answer to that question. I know that we know about different giants. There's stories about giants. We had the Melech Og was on the back of Noach's teva in the flood, and he couldn't fit in the teva, but he rode on the back of the teva. And we've had other stories of giants coming.
Goliath.
Yeah, I don't really want to say anything because I don't want to just sprout, but I don't know so much about them, but I have heard in previous, there's giants come up and come up every now and again in the stories. I don't want to say anything more now because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Okay.
So Avram came from Beersheba, and he came to eulogize Sarah and to cry or bewail her. So if somebody would read just that Rashi, it would be good, and then we can close out the screen. So who wants to read the eulogizing Sarah? Corina, are you there in your darkness? Or she had to go? Okay, so I'll read it. Why it says on account of Sarah's demise, it's connected to the story of the Akedah because as a result of the news of the binding that her son was prepared for slaughter and was almost slaughtered, her soul flew out of her and she died. That's why we're telling the story about this now, because it's connected. Oh, thank you, Karina. It's connected to the story of the Akedah, because we learn from Midrashim that that's why Sarah died. That's why Sarah died, because there's a lot of different conversation about exactly what happened, but the one option is that the Satan came and told her that Abraham, the Satan came up to Sarah and said, where do you think your husband is now? Do you know he's gone up the mountain on a trek to sacrifice your son Yitzchak? And she was—
That wasn't nice.
Yeah, Sarah was like totally, shocked from that. And because of hearing that news, she kind of had a heart attack and her soul left her body. Another explanation is that she was told that your son was supposed to be sacrificed and he didn't get sacrificed. And then maybe she felt that he wasn't worthy, or she felt whatever she felt, that he was so close to being sacrificed that even though she knew he hadn't been, she still had what we would call a heart attack and her soul left her body. So that's why we're talking about this now, right after the Akedah. And we're talking about Sarah as this mom. Hi, sorry. We're talking about this Akedah, this woman who Abraham is coming to bury her. It's the first time that somebody's passed away who's getting buried, and the Parsha deals with Abraham looking for a place to bury her, and he finds this Ma'arat HaMachpelah, this cave of Machpelah, in the city of Kiryat Arba. Now, it's interesting, just to bring a personal note to the story. My son is almost 17, and when he was almost 13, 4 years ago, I took him on a trip to Eretz Yisrael right before his bar mitzvah for this Parsha, Chaya, Sara. And in Hebron, which is in Kiryat Arba, like we just read in the Pasuk, usually, and I don't know what's going to happen this Shabbos because it's COVID, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I think actually 5,000 people in the last couple of years come to Hebron to celebrate and be in Hebron for this Shabbos, the Shabbos of Sara Imeinu, getting, sorry, you need to mute your mic, please.
Sorry.
I hear you crinkling.
Sorry.
People come to Kiryat Arba, they come to Hebron, they come to daven at the Ma'arat HaMachpelah on the Shabbos, and then read this story of Abraham. It's still not muted, sorry.
I'm touching my phone, it won't work.
Oh, so maybe should I try to mute
My
you?
phone something's wrong with my phone. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I won't anymore. You can mute me from your end?
Yeah, I'll mute you from my end. I will mute you from my end.
Thank you.
And anyone who wants to unmute can unmute. Okay. So, so 4 years ago, I went with my son. He's almost 13 years old. And we come to the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, and it's this huge cave. You don't really feel like it's a cave. You don't feel the cave aspect of it so much, but there are hundreds and thousands of people there, and it's a huge, big event. And my son got an aliyah, and it was really very amazing. And it turned out that I didn't even know this, but actually there's my daughter-in-law's mother her name's Ilana, also like your name, Oksana, Ilana. She had a dream, and she had a dream that people wanted to come to Hebron for this Shabbos, Chaya Sara, and they couldn't find places to stay, and they couldn't find places to eat, and they wanted to come and spend Shabbos Pashas Chaya Sara in Hebron, and they couldn't because there wasn't accommodation for them. And somehow in her dream, she understood that this is not a good thing. And she organized that money should be raised so that whoever wants to come and spend Shabbos in Hebron for Pashas Chaya Sara should come and be able to spend Shabbos then. In her dream, she dreamed about a huge tent that would be with chandeliers and beautiful tables with flowers on the table and able to accommodate hundreds of people. And she had this dream, and then she fundraised money, and she made the dream into a reality. And up until this year, which is COVID, for the last 5 years, they've had a tent up in outside the Marat HaMachpelah with chandeliers in the tent and a set table and flowers on the table, and people can come for free, free, provided that people could come and be in this place for this Parsha. Now, it's a very profound Parsha. It's also, there's a teaching that the Marat HaMachpelah, this cave where we said already, Adam and Chava, Avram and Sara, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah, all buried, is at the place of the entrance to Gan Eden. And it's a teaching that it's the place where heaven and earth actually meet, and it's a very holy place. So Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg, who teaches a lot of Kabbalah, he goes into this a little bit more, and he teaches us that really we didn't look at it on the shared screen, but the next pasuk, actually I'll share the screen because it's interesting to see. The next pasuk that I hadn't read, it says, and Avram arose from before his dead, he was mourning for Sarah, and he spoke to the sons of Het, the Hittites, saying, I am a stranger, and I live amongst you, but I'm not from your tribe. Please give me a burial property with you so that I may bury my dead from before me. And the sons of Het answered Avram, saying, listen to us, you're Prince of God. In the choicest of our graves, bury your dead. None of us will withhold his grave from you to bury. But he ends up, Avraham, he prostrates himself, and he then says, I'm going to bury my dead here. And then in the end, they sell him, we don't have to read it inside, but they sell him this property of land for 400 pieces of silver. So Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg says that because we know that Adam and Chava were buried there, this was meant to be not just a Jewish burial ground. It wasn't meant really just for Abraham and for his family and descendants of his family. It was sort of meant for all of humanity. But with the Tower of Babel, the flood, many things where many peoples of the world, in a way, disappointed Hashem. We know he was disappointed because, number one, he brought a flood. Number two, he took that whole community of Babel that we already talked about, like it was group, everyone think the same, everyone, has the same values, no one disagrees, we all in this big tower of insularity. Hashem didn't like that either. He dispersed the people from Babel, the Tower of Babel, Tower of Babel, I guess becomes Babylonia. I don't know the connection between Babel and Babylonia, but it sounds like it's the same word, so it must be related. But now when Avram purchases this land, which is the first purchase of Eretz Israel, where we see it written in the Chumash that he's taking 400 pieces of silver and he's purchasing the land, now it becomes a piece of land for Jews very specifically. And it's interesting. I'm kind of going from place to place here and bouncing a little bit, but I wanted to quote also from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, because we know that he passed away on Shabbos, and what an incredibly special person he was, and how, what a great loss it is for the Jewish people. So I just want to, number one, I want to dedicate the shir to the memory, to the soul, Le'ilu Nishmas, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and whose name is, I think, Yaakov Svi ben Lieber, but I need to check that, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is that. And I want to, before I carry on, I just want to read a beautiful quote from Rabbi Sachs. It's coming a little bit out of context, but it's still very beautiful, and I wanted to read it at the beginning of the class. That Rabbi Sachs said, faith is the ability to live with delay without losing trust in the promise, to experience disappointment without losing hope, to know that the road between the real and the ideal is long, and yet be willing to undertake the journey. Which I thought was a really beautiful quote. And the woman who did the dance program on Sunday, Judith Rose, she read it out, and it was so beautiful. I asked her to send it to me. So Jonathan Sachs, in his essay on this week's Parsha, he makes a really interesting point. And the interesting point is this, that Hashem promises Abraham a few promises. He promises him that he's going to inherit a lot of land in Eretz Israel. And he promises him that he's going to have many, 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 many children. And about the land part, Hashem is telling, he says to Avram, to your offspring I'll give this land. So Avram built an altar to Hashem. Then he says, after Lot leaves him, he says, lift up your eyes from where you are and look north, south, east, and west, all the land that you will see. I will give you and your offspring forever. Walk through the breadth and the length of the land. I'm giving it to you. And he keeps telling him he's giving him the land, he's giving him the land, he's giving him the land. But actually we see right here, when it comes to bearing Sara, Avram has to work very hard to purchase the land from the Hittites. It's not an easy sale. And in fact, the way that the children of Het talk to him, and they kind of, it's not the easiest negotiation. And in the end, he ends up paying a huge amount of money for it. And then Rabbi Sachs brings another piece, which is also pertinent to this Parsha, because he says about children. We know that Abraham almost sacrificed his own son. He thought he was meant to sacrifice his own son, but we know that he didn't. But in terms of children, Hashem is promising him, I'll make you a great nation. I'll bless you. I'll make your name great. You'll be a blessing. You'll have so many children. You'll be like the dust of the earth. If anyone could count the dust, your offspring will be like that. Look up to the heavens and count the stars. Big, big promises. And then we see that when Abraham later in this week's Parsha, he sends Eliezer to look for a shidduch for his son, Yitzchak. Eliezer is engaging with Lavan, and it's quite he brings camels, and he brings bracelets, and he brings this, and he brings that. And then Lavan wants, Rivka to stay longer. And it's not just a simple thing. It's a lot of thought and a lot of work. So before we even move on in the Parsha, I just want to bring this point that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said, which is such a brilliant point, that he promises Abraham the land of Israel. He promises him children, many, many children in the future. He promises him all these things. Hi, Shoshan. Promises him all these things, but Abraham still has to work really hard to fulfill those promises. It's not instant. It's not that, he promised him the land of Israel. Abraham had to do this negotiation, take 400 silver coins and pay and purchase the land. And there was a debate and an argument, and they wanted Abraham to bury Sara in their burial ground, and Abraham says, no, I want it to be my own burial ground. And they say this, and he says that, and eventually he gets the land. And in terms of the children thing, it's not easy. Just because Hashem promised him doesn't mean he doesn't have to make a large amount of avoda and so what Rabbi Sachs, Alav Shalom, says is that what Hashem wants from us is he wants us to partner with him, that the divine promise is not what it at first seemed, a statement that Hashem will act. It's actually a request, an invitation from Hashem to Abraham and his children that they should act. They should be part of it. It's not like Hashem just will, do it all. And I thought that was a really beautiful idea from Rabbi Sachs. The divine promise is not what it seems, a statement from God. It's a request, an invitation from Hashem to Abraham and his children that they should act, and God will help them. The outcome will be what Hashem said it would be, but not without total commitment from Abraham's family against what will sometimes seem to be insuperable obstacles. I think that's a really beautiful idea, that the Jewish way, we even said it last week, Abraham negotiates with Hashem about Sodom. Maybe there's a tzaddik, maybe we can still save someone. He's not just passive in relation to his presence in this world, on this earth. He's very active in everything that happens to him and his family and his descendants. So now coming to this essay from Yitzhak Ginsburg about this enduring quality of Sarah's life. So here. So first of all, Sarah is the first Jew to die, and there's lots of space dedicated to the eulogy and the weeping, and it speaks about the word chai, her life. If we look, Vahayu chayei Sarah, and it was the life of Sarah, and then we said 100 years, 20 years, 7 years, and then it says again, Shnei chayei Sarah, the years of the life of Sarah. So Rav Yitzchak talks about the fact that this is two aspects of her life in this world and life in the world to come. That in a way her essence is sort of everlasting in the way that I spoke about before, that she doesn't degenerate, that her spirituality and her physicality was so vibrant and vital and youthful in a sense, but there's this that her death, the end of her physical life, is not the end of her life. She lives on, like everybody does, like all souls do, but in Sarah's case, one of the exceptional people that, as I said before, her body doesn't degenerate, doesn't disintegrate. There's this life force that is, in a way, even more powerful than normal. And then he brings this very beautiful idea. He says, what's the interpretation of Kiryat Arba? So we just read together in the Rashi that it's the city of the 4 couples and the city of the 4 giants. But Rav Yitzchak brings from the Zohar that it's the city of the 4 elements that compose physical matter: fire, water, air, and fire, water, air, and earth. And as long as we live, these physical elements are fused together, but at the moment of death, they disengage. But with Sara, somehow they didn't. They continued to hold together in some kind of miraculous or beyond Teva fashion. And he goes on and he brings out this idea more specifically because he says Sara died and was buried in Hebron. And Hebron, the word Hebron, has the same letters as the Hebrew word for chibur, which is connection. So she's buried in Hebron, in Kiryat Arba, but Hebron is a hint to the fact that there's this connection of body and soul in a way, or some aspect of connection that instead of just all her elements kind of just disengaging one from another, somehow when she died, she remains whole, spiritually and physically. She had unified the two realms in, and that's why it says Chaya, Chaya, like it has this repetition of the word for her life. The four elements remained unified in her body even after her death. Now that's a pretty intense thing for the Zohar to say, but nevertheless it says it. And Rav Yitzchak is talking about an aspect that many people have an entropy, or in yoga classes we talk about it almost like the force of gravity. And in yoga, a lot of our effort is to defy gravity, that there's like a natural push down on a person and that their body should sort of start to hunch and their muscles kind of droop, and then you act to keep yourself upright and to stand straight and to learn to engage your muscles to defy gravity. So Rav Yitzchak is using this word entropy, that there's a kind of, progression towards aging, and, when you're 7 and then you get to 20, so you lose, just through this entropy, you lose the innocence. Sara didn't lose it. And then from 20 to 100, that you could lose, Sara didn't lose the beauty, the innocence from 7 till 20. And then from 20 to 100, she doesn't lose her spiritual purity at all. As she comes in at 20, so she's not just getting progressively toxic. And it's interesting, like that word toxic, I was thinking about it before, when something degenerates, even physiologically, we're talking so much about viruses and people who are immune. I have heard, and I don't understand it well enough to explain it perfectly well, but a virus will not affect a person who doesn't have some part of their system somewhat toxic, and the virus kind of comes in and hopefully tries to detoxify a toxic element, and it can be a cleanse. But it won't come in if there isn't anything toxic to begin with. So if there's a bowl of fruit and one of the fruit has a split or a cut, so that's where the mold starts to attack. There will never be mold on a fruit that doesn't have any damage or cut or bruise or something where it hasn't already got a damage. So that idea is coming into my mind now when I'm thinking of Sara, that she was so pure, so vibrant, so infused with her spirituality through and through, that there was no space for this toxic degeneration to come in. And there's the overlap of the physical and the spiritual sort of happening at the same time. So, and then this aspect of machpelah, the word ma'arat ha-machpelah means that the cave was doubled. It actually means the cave of doubling. So there's two parts of the cave. There's an upper part and a lower part, and then there were all the couples, and there was that aspect of doubling. But there's also this aspect that I mentioned before, that it's connecting heaven and earth, above and beyond. It's a kind of place where there's this connection. So this anti-entropic status of the Jewish body is inherent in every one of us. So now this comes to the interesting part. Sara, for me, is always this incredible example of a person who just is ever youthful, always young, able to give birth. And in my own personal life, I have to say, probably because I would say specifically in my case, through the yoga world, I was blessed to meet some older people who are my teachers, who are incredible even in their age. Like one of my yoga teachers is, 83, teaches 4 times a week. Before COVID, she was teaching 6 times a week. Another one of my teachers, was in her mid-70s, completely youthful, standing on her head. We spoke about another teacher that I was blessed to meet, who passed away right a few months after 100th birthday. She was teaching, all right up till a couple weeks before she passed away. So when you are able to, infuse your being with vitality and joy and connection to meaning and to a spirituality, and in Sara's case, it went so much further. I mean, the yoga teachers, Baruch Hashem, they're great, wonderful, but in Sara's case, lahavdil, Elif Havdalas, she had the mitzvahs and the connection. Every body part connects to a different mitzvah. So 248 positive commandments, 248 limbs in the body, 365 vessels and arteries in the body, 365 places where our passions and our kind of vital, bloody life force has to be held back. And there's a complete correlation between the body, the limbs of the body, and the positive commandments, and the blood vessels and the veins and the negative commandments. And those veins tell us to hold back and restrain our passions, and those positive commandments tell us the way to use our body and infuse it. So we all potentially have this. And Rav Yitzchak ended his essay with these following words, and I started reading it, but I'll read it again. I'll just drink a little bit first. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol bivaro. He says this anti-entropic status of the Jewish body is inherent in every one of us. Many righteous individuals or martyrs have had their bodies that remained intact even decades into the grave. Sara was the first. That's an amazing thing. That gives us an idea also that we're energetic beings, and if we can infuse our energy and our connection to Kedusha into our bodies, we really energize and make so vital our bodies that for Sara, even after death, it still shows this imprint of this Kedusha. So that's talking about her life, her burial, the purchase of the land that was not, so easy, and then, of course, the next part of the Parsha is the shidduch, finding a shidduch. Avram sending Eliezer to go look for a shidduch for Yitzchak. And we know that when Yitzchak finds Rivka and brings Rivka back, there's a couple very beautiful parts that Rivka is riding on the back of a camel, and then she sees Yitzchak meditating in the field, and she's so caught up and so enthralled at how holy he seems meditating in the field that she falls off her camel, but she gets back on. And it says that Yitzchak, who was feeling very bereft on the death of his mother, when he marries Rivka, he's consoled on the death of his mother. So another thing that connects to this energy of Sara that was so profound and so connected to vitality and life is that we know that when Sara lit Shabbos candles, the candles burned from one Shabbos all the way to the other Shabbos. We know that when Sara lived in her tent, there was a cloud of Kedusha above her tent corresponding to Taras HaMishpacha, that she was keeping to the, that there was holiness in her relationship with Abraham. And we know that when she baked bread, her bread stayed fresh from when she baked it, I'm assuming Erev Shabbos, till the next week. And all of these things are things that show that time doesn't diminish them. And it's interesting that when we had a Mishkan, we had the menorah that echoes Sarah's candles, we had the showbreads that echoed her challah, and we had the clouds of glory that kept us protected, that echoed the cloud that was above Sarah's tent. So when Yitzchak marries Rivka and then when Sarah passed away, all those things ceased to be present. But then when Rivka came and Yitzchak married Rivka, he was consoled on the death of his mother because all those three things again became present. The cloud, the freshness of the bread in this miraculous way, and the candles. So this energy that Sarah had, that Yitzchak was missing so much when his mother passed away, he was consoled when he saw that Rivka had that same energy, that energy to merge the spiritual and the physical, the image to merge, the energy or the Chayas to merge this world and the next world, to infuse the Gashmis with so much Ruchnius that the bread wouldn't go stale, the candles wouldn't go out. And then Rav Yitzchak telling us that we all have this power within ourselves to kind of live in this way where we merge the spirituality with the physicality so much and so well that when we think about things like Techia Samesim and how can that possibly happen, this merging and blending across barriers from the physical to the spiritual to the physical becomes a little bit more possible to imagine how there can be Techia Samesim. And I'm not going to go into it now. Ruchnius is spirituality. Gashmius is physicality, and Ruchnius is spirituality. So I'm not going to go into it now, but Rav Yitzchak talks in his essay about ashes to ashes, and that this idea of going into the dust, and dust is connected to humility, which is also connected to the city. Let me just see the city. He brings one more thing about dust, city, Afar, that he purchased the cave of Machpelah from Ephron, connected to Afar, which is dust, and he has a whole thing about dust and humility, which I don't really want to go to. But Sara is an incredible persona of vitality and youthfulness, and she's also connected to Malchus, which is this royalty, this aspect of royalty that we want to try and embody within ourselves and kind of activate in ourselves this royalty, this messianic, Mashiach-dike quality of Malchus, which is, Malchus is taking spirituality and bringing it down to earth, into your feet, onto the ground, into your body, into your being. So I think it's said that Avram was the soul and Sarah is the body. I think that's how it's taught, which makes sense that Sarah represents the root of Malchus. Sarah is the beginning of this container, this feminine container for all the Jewish women that come before, who in their homes create something that the Mishkan tries to emulate and the Beis HaMikdash tries to emulate, but it starts off in the tent of Sarah. So that's what I have for now. And I will wish everyone a good Shabbos who are watching online later, and say good night.